The Panthers signed another Boqvist brother, and Nate Schmidt is happy to be a Florida Panther. We're going to discuss that all next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, July 10th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs are finished and the sports start sporting like we want them to, this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So the Florida Panthers, they make another move now that the first wave of free agency is has been over, and seeing what's out there left on the market. And the Panthers in this just yesterday were able to bring in Adam Boqvist, the brother of Jesper Boqvist, something that was spoken about around the Panthers fan base about getting the brother of Jesper into the mix. Wanted to test his options, but eventually chose Florida as his destination for this year after not being given a qualifying offer by the Columbus Blue Jackets. But here to discuss this and more on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast of the signing of Adam Boqvist, and then also Tomas Nosek and Nate Schmidt in the last 2 days have spoken to the South Florida media. And also today is a big day for D Camp as we have a scrimmage tonight from the Baptist Health Iceplex in Fort Lauderdale. But here to discuss this with me, it's a Winans Wednesday, an evening edition of the show. Jacob Winans is back. Jacob, welcome back to the show, my friend. Oh, got you on mute. There we go.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's never a dull moment with Panthers hockey. Lots to talk about today, but yeah, I know we're going to lead off with that the Adam Boqvist signing. I'm super pumped for that. There's a lot we can get into on that one, but yeah, I'm very, very excited for that signing. So yeah, I love the topics today. Let's get going.
Yeah, and now for the Florida Panthers, assuming with the contract, it's a one-way contract for Boqvist and the Panthers. Originally tweeted as a two-way contract right before with a little confusion there, but then the Panthers officially confirmed that it's a one-way deal for Boqvist. So now having both brothers into the mix for the Panthers, and for Adam, a top 10 pick a few years ago from the Chicago Blackhawks, then went to Columbus. For him, not played a lot of games in the last in the last few years, but for the resume and also what he's built to be a top 10 pick. For me, looking at the Columbus cap situation too, I'm just thinking, why didn't they qualify an offer for him? But obviously there was a big mess in Columbus too, and Pascal Vincent wasn't really playing a lot of the younger guys too. It was really top heavy as far as minutes for them too. But with Boqvist, the resume that he brings, being a right-handed shot, one who could get in on the rush, and help gain the zone for the Panthers too. This signing, real low risk, high reward for the Panthers there for them in this pick. Now have third time, if assuming they both make the team, a pair of brothers going back to Bure and now a few years ago with the Stahl brothers. So what do you think when this first when the signing was first announced?
Well, I was really hoping it would happen really this entire free agency period, but when we signed Jesper, I immediately thought, let's go get Adam, get both brothers here. I thought that should have been the move from day one, and I'm happy to see that it panned out for Bill Zito. What he brings to the table, he brings a lot of the intangibles, a lot of the skills that can't necessarily just be taught. He has a lot of the natural talent. He's an effortless skater. He's got a long reach with the stick. He's a good right shot. Has great vision. He has potential to quarterback a power play. He gets pucks through traffic, so he's got a lot of the things that you like, and some of the things that you don't necessarily like, or things that he hasn't really shown yet, are just some of that the good decision making in the offensive zone, or in the defensive zone. I mean, in his own zone, he hasn't been necessarily the sharpest decision maker there, which he's a young guy. That comes with experience. It comes with age. He's also played on some really, really, really bad teams. So he hasn't exactly had the best group of guys around him to help him develop in that way. Just knowing when the play is not there to be made, and get the puck out of the zone, and he'll learn that. If he's paired with a veteran like Mikula or Kulikov, or even a Nate Schmidt type of guy, it'll be impossible for him not to learn some of those things, and those guys will help him cover up some of those holes in his game as he develops. So it's very low risk, but the rewards could be huge, because he is a top 10 pick. He has all the talent in the world to become a number one defenseman if he continues on a trajectory where he actually has a chance to develop around good players. We could be looking at another Brandon Montour situation. If you think back to when the Panthers traded for Brandon Montour, he was seen as statistically one of the worst defensemen in the NHL at the time of that trade. And it was never a question of Montour's natural talent. It was the fact that he was in Buffalo, a team that was struggling, had zero direction. He really had no development opportunity there, which is kind of, everyone was thrown into a position where you're just playing. There's no structure, and there's no development happening. And Boqvist is now in a situation with a winning organization, a lot of veterans. He'll be one of the youngest guys on the team, and he'll have a chance to come in and actually develop his game. And maybe the Panthers will be the team to tap into his natural talent and his super high upside. He's still a very young player in this league, so I'm excited.
Yeah, and you mentioned the fact that he's a right-handed shot too for him, and the fact that has averaged around just over 17 minutes of ice time in his career for him, and last year specifically 2 minutes and 4 seconds of average time on the power play too for Columbus. So some special teams time that could use, because there's still that hole for the Panthers too in the lineup when you think about who's going to get those opportunities. I mean, two of the guys that the Panthers have signed, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, and Nate Schmidt, he's one of them. Adam Boqvist is another, and then Gustav Forsling is a third too. Unless you really want to go back to putting Aaron Ekblad on there, but I think he's more. If you do bring him, it's power play too, and having him on the left wing to fire one timers for him. But there's still for him having that opportunity to bring a little bit of that, and I'm not saying to necessarily have him like as a one trick pony. I know Keith Yandel was a third pair, and then he was used on power play one. I don't know if that's a situation necessarily for the Panthers, but right-handed shot, something that they're used to with the angle of the shot too. Even though Brandon Montour was taken off for OEL in game 6 and 7, so for the Panthers, having someone of top 10 pick caliber, resumes there, and maybe just needs another chance somewhere else. This could once again be another type of home run for Bill Zito.
Yeah, and this has been Bill Zito's really his calling card as the Panthers GM, is finding these guys who had really high potential and for whatever reason didn't really pan out in their last stop. So think guys like Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Bennett, Anthony Duclair, Gustav Forsling, Brandon Montour. He's bought low on a lot of these guys, and the Panthers have managed to develop them into really, really key players. And at least on the defensive side of things, Gus Forsling is really the gold standard for late bloomer, develops into an all-star player. He's become the poster for that in the NHL, and he's probably Bill Zito's biggest win as a general manager from an asset management perspective. And here, this is a very similar move to that. It's not a waiver claim, but it's a guy who was given up on and probably given up on way too early, because he's still young and still has all of that upside and all of that potential. And he just needs the right environment to put it together. The Panthers can offer him, they can give him playing time. They can give him a partner that can help him be productive as he develops. he can be put in all types of situations with elite talents that he's never been able to play with before, and also be in a Stanley Cup winning environment. There's not a better place for him to grow and develop as a player than the Panthers. And it's a situation where it's like other teams, I feel like, can't believe that Bill Zito's done it again. He's found another guy who has diamond in the rough written all over him. And we'll see if the Panthers are able to put it together and see if he's able to put it together. Health will be a big part of that. Opportunity will be a big part of that, and just his willingness to buy in. I don't think we'll see a problem with that, and I think he's going to take this chance and make the most of it. And the great thing about that is, if it does pan out, Panthers are in a great position to keep him around long term if they choose to.
Yep, and him being a UFA next year, you have a decision there, and yeah, definitely could salvage something out of him for sure. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where in the last 2 days, 2 new Panthers spoke to the media in Tomas Nosek and Nate Schmidt, and one of them really brought the fire to their media availability. We are going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning. And for your car, eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, like superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether it's speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make sure your car make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to this Wednesday, July 10th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Had to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Back here with Jacob Winans here on this edition of the show, and some new Panthers spoke to the media in the last 2 days. Tomas Nosek talking to the Panthers to the media on Tuesday, and then Nate Schmidt spoke to the media on Wednesday, just a few hours ago from the time of recording. And let's start with Nosek. Obviously, there's that video from Game 2 of Round 1 back in 2023 of Nosek and Tkachuk going after each other, but spoke about how that's water under the bridge. Something that he hadn't even thought about too, but also spoke about how special he knew the Panthers were once that around the first round. Obviously, when you think of President's Trophy winning season, runs to the final, and then doing it again. So he spoke about the signs of him wanting to be a part of it, and just like continue when you think continuing to find a way to once again get guys on the cheap, and spoke about what he brings to the table. And also he played with guys like Pavel Datsyuk, so he played with Datsyuk and also gets to play with Alexander Barkov, and also spoke about how similar they are in their games and something that he wants to model. But here's the thing, Jacob, a few years ago from his time in Boston, that we speak about this guy as the replacement for Kevin Stenlund. 2 years ago, he was 59% in the faceoff dot too. So that is going to be huge for him. More on the quieter side. He also said that he spoke to Radko Gudas. His wife spoke to Radko Gudas' wife about joining the team too. So a little bit of a connection of knowing what is to come for him in South Florida. So what did you make of what Nosek had to say?
I'm really excited for his addition. He dealt with a lot of injury issues last year, so we didn't really get to see a ton of his game in that New Jersey situation, which that team ended up being really disappointing. And I don't think that year went well for anybody. But I think that it's kind of the Panthers' game here when it comes to Nosek, because he was awesome in his role in Boston. He was awesome in his role in Vegas. I mean, he's a guy who has his position. He's a fourth line center. He's a face-off winner. He's a penalty killer. He's a physical forechecker. He knows he's a veteran and really knows his role and executes it well. And that's exactly what we felt like we were getting with Kevin Stenlund. He delivered, probably exceeded that. We don't need Nosek to be exactly what Stenlund was, but as close to that and replacing that as possible. And I think he's a perfect candidate for it if he's able to stay healthy. But he strikes me as a real veteran presence, a guy who he's no drama. He's all about business. He's going to come in the locker room. He's going to do his job. And I think the Panthers that fits exactly what they're looking for in their veteran depth pieces. He's a guy who's not here to make waves or anything. He's a guy who strikes me as hardworking, gets down to business, and I think he's going to fill his role just fine.
Yeah, and just looking at the stats, he has a little bit over 8 goals as his career high is 8 goals, a little more than what Kevin Stenlund's was. And you spoke about how he doesn't need the guy. You don't need him to be the guy who could contribute over and over again, but definitely maybe even more goal production on that side. So who knows what we're going to get from Nosek. Also, we spoke about Nate Schmidt or a few last week about him being one of the original misfits for the Vegas Golden Knights. Tomas Nosek was also one of the original misfits when he was picked from the Detroit Red Wings too. So now that gives us an opportunity to switch gears a little bit to Nate Schmidt too, which he was wearing the type of shirt that he was wearing. First of all, to the media availability, I feel like he was doing the Zoom call on his cell phone. First of all, so he was wearing like a tropical kind of buttoned-up shirt with a palm tree and some type of drink, alcoholic beverage. It looks so he was trying to fit the Florida vibes to begin with. So that's number one, win in his media availability. Number two, all of his answers were like 1 or 2 minutes too. So that's how how detailed he was in his responses too for him was there. And also talk about the opportunity of the amount of D-men that are on the team right now. The Panthers have 9 of them signed, and also going back to hardware mode too, for trying to grind and getting into the lineup, even though I do think he has a really good chance of making it due to his upside too, and also the history of trying to get here. And also spoke about how things started to line up of the Panthers build too, and now it's finally here to have him with the Panthers too. So also the big headliner, and it is something that I have to say here. He spoke about, I have all the money, I just want to win a cup. Your reaction to that?
That was my favorite part of his entire availability was that comment. That is exactly the type of mentality that the Panthers are looking for. He's going to fit in just fine. I love guys who are honest with the media. The long answers to me are always a great sign. It's guys who are thoughtful. If they're chatty with the media, they're chatty in the locker room. The Panthers lost a lot of those locker room presences, guys who are big talkers and keep the mood light. And I think he's going to fit in great as one of those locker room leaders, a guy who's seen a lot, played in a ton of big playoff games, played in a Stanley Cup final, a guy who's hungry and motivated. And it helps. We've seen how much it helps a team when you've got a veteran who comes in and you want to win for them. Nate Schmidt is the type of guy who I think can motivate guys because he's going to endear himself to his teammates to the point where they want to win for him. The guys are going to want Nate Schmidt to be able to lift the Stanley Cup. And I think that's really all you can ask for. You saw how much a guy like Kyle Okposo meant to the team in this past run. They really wanted to get it done for him and give him that. And I think Nate Schmidt is the type of guy who's been in the league forever. He's laid his body on the line for a lot of teams. He has a lot of respect around the league. And I think now being a Panther, which we've talked about it a couple times, but he was almost a Panther a few years ago at a much higher price tag, but he was nearly traded to the Panthers, and this is something that's kind of been a long time coming. So it's good that he's coming here. I don't think he's at any risk of not making the team. I think if anything, he's competing for a spot in the top four. But the fact that he's coming in with the mentality of I'm not guaranteed a spot on this roster. There's 8 other D men that I'm competing with for a spot. That's exactly what you need. You need that camp competition. You need everyone pushing each other to make each other better. And he's the perfect veteran to come in and do that. But getting him at 800,000 is a massive win for Bill Zito. That is a crazy discount for a guy who really was not playing well below what he was being paid in Winnipeg. It's just I think his time there was up. Their window is looking a little different than what they could afford to pay him, and that's the business of hockey. But it's the Panthers' gain when you can get a guy like that at such a cheap price tag. And I think he's going to be an awesome addition on the ice, definitely, but in the locker room, I think his personality and his talkativeness, his leadership, those are going to be huge because the Panthers did lose a lot of that.
And think about just hearing that impression out of Nate Schmidt, and also the fact that he's reuniting with Paul Maurice and Jamie Compon, who we spoke about. We spoke about Boqvist, Adam Boqvist being possibly in the power play, but now Nate Schmidt spoke about how he said he'll play anywhere on the power play if it's on one side of the point or the other side or the other side of the blue line. He'll do it too. So that's another thing, and also the chattiness too. That's probably something that Paul Maurice went up to Bill Zito, the fact that there's familiarity there, and say, hey, get this guy there. We need someone who's loud and who's gonna be whose presence is going to be felt once he even walks into a room too. So that's another thing about what Nate Schmidt is bringing in for the Panthers here. And he's mentioned that it reminds me of his first years in Vegas too, and how he compared this as something that is magical for the Panthers. So that's what happens when you win and you have that buzz around your franchise too. So that's great to see how a great first impression that Nate Schmidt made to the South Florida media and to the fans too. But we're gonna switch gears and transition to segment number 3. We're gonna discuss more about development camp. How yes, we have a scrimmage today at the Fort Lauderdale Iceplex at War Memorial. We're gonna discuss more about what the prospects have been up to, and we'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But the playoffs are done and the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. All we have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime we're in the mood. And even though the Panthers have lost a lot, FanDuel still has them as the second best odds to win the Stanley Cup come next year. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Third and final segment here on this Wednesday, July 10th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday late afternoon edition of Winans Wednesday. And so two more days of D camp in the books for the Panthers. More of the coaches in the last 2 days have more worked on more skill drills. We've seen more of odd man rushes too for what they were working in, more of a curl ups in the zone on passes from the blue line and getting a shot on. So that's a little bit of what we saw for the last few days of development camp too for the Panthers. But a few guys we got a chance to discuss more about with the guys over at DCamp. But some of the off-ice activities, Jacob, that the Panthers did, one of them yesterday, I'm waiting to refresh my feed to see if there was another one, but we haven't seen anything so far. But Tuesday, the rookies went fishing, and according to one of the staff members, they caught 10 fish. So we saw Merrick Alsher catch one, Hunter St. Martin catch another one too. So and the boat set sail just outside of the elbow room too. So cool to see that they're having a little bit of fun off the ice.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I saw the video. I want to say it was Hunter St. Martin who looked like he caught a shark. That was a pretty interesting video. I don't know if you saw that, but he
Mhm.
reeled in a shark and then they released it. That's a story. He's definitely gonna be able to talk about that one with the guys anytime he comes back for the next decamp. But yeah, it's good. The Panthers do a really good job of getting the rookies out and uh, showing them around the community, taking them to do fun things. We've seen them do bowling. We've seen them do Marlins games in the past. We've seen them uh, go on a fishing trip. Seems like every year they go fishing, which is really cool. It's great for team bonding. It's great for these guys who many of them will end up being future teammates, either in the AHL with Charlotte or eventually Florida Panthers. It's really good for them to build that relationship early on. But also, I love the fact that it shows them kind of the perks of living and playing in
Yep.
South Florida, especially guys who are going the college route or guys who are going the Europe route, where the Panthers obviously the Panthers own their rights, but guys who are in college and could end up with a chance to sign elsewhere. It's almost a bit of a pitch to these guys of what Florida has to offer. And I don't think the Panthers need much of a sales pitch right now. All they have to do is show that Stanley Cup. But it's still good to see them make that effort for these rookies and show them the perks of living and playing here while they're at development camp, trying to make a name for themselves, working on their game. I personally think that's one of the best things every year about the Panthers D camp.
Yeah, definitely a big bonding opportunity for these guys. More about it's not really so much about X's and O's, more about how you listen to criticism from coaches and also how you fit with the environment too. So, but we also saw a few spoke about a few guys. One of them being Josh Davies spoke about how he uh, went to Game 3 in Edmonton and how it was inspiring too for him, and also how much relaxing it was for him the rest of the season to play it out when he signed his ELC in December of last year. Sachin spoke about how he was great to be back in his home province, but really couldn't discuss cheering for the Panthers while being in Alberta, just like Hunter St. Martin too. And also, I learned a little bit more about Oliver Ocular. Spent some time in the WHL, and then also played with Yaroslav Koski and Simon Nemec in the World Championships too. So has been around some talent there, and also had a highlight goal in D camp today between the legs too. So keep on the lookout for him. He's going to be in Charlotte this year as he signed his ELC too. Linus Eriksson spoke about how much pride he had with the Panthers trading up to get him, and he was also able to speak with Patrick Hornquist and get some guidance. So cool to see someone in the organization is already in his ear. But the big story came from yesterday, where Jack Devine spoke about how he's going to finish his degree in finance at the University of Denver, and then finish out the season, hopefully go for a third championship at NCAA championship for the Pioneers. And also, there's a few ways I look at this. There's one way it was like, oh no, the Panthers are going to lose something in Jack Devine, but I also think about this that it doesn't necessarily always translate from college to pro, but also I think about it from the player. Jack Devine, if he doesn't see an opportunity to be part of the Panthers, or if he feels like he's blocked from getting there because there might be a little bit of a logjam, at least temporarily at forward, at least this year or even going into next year. I can see why he's waiting it out. He said that the Panthers supported his decision to go back, but I can see why the other side of things. How are you looking at this situation when you hear Jack Devine saying that he's going back to Denver to finish his degree?
Yeah, well, I see it. I don't see it as a total negative. And honestly, as Panther fans, we've been burned like this in the past. So natural reaction was to think, oh no, this could be a Zach Hyman or this could be an Adam Mascarin, guys who
Adam
Panthers
Fox
Adam
too.
Fox.
Yeah.
And Hyman and Mascarin were guys that the Panthers were high on and felt like they had futures here, and it wasn't really reciprocated, or the relationship wasn't managed well, and they ended up going different directions. So for the Panthers, I understand a lot of people got concerned immediately thinking Devine was going to leave. I didn't see it that way. I saw it more as this is a guy who is kind of bordering on possibly NHL ready, possibly needs a little more seasoning at the AHL level. He's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get a good read on it, given his level of competition in college. He's played at the highest level, highest competition level in college. Can't argue that. And he's a proven winner. But it's not like he's about to crack a lineup that's bottom of the barrel in the NHL. This is the Stanley Cup champion. So making a jump from college hockey to the Stanley Cup champion, that's a tough roster to crack.
Yeah.
And I don't fault him at all for going back to college for one more year. I think if you look at what the Panthers had here, there was no path to even middle 6 minutes for him. He would have to, realistically, there's only one open spot in the Panthers top 9. And I would say Mackie Samoskevich has the leg up on that spot. And if not him, there's Jesper Boqvist who could move into that spot. I mean, there's lots of options. And I don't think when Jack Devine made the decision to go back to college that he expected they would just leave a spot in the top 9 open for him. That would be unrealistic. So it's a smart decision for him. Go back to college, get a ton of minutes, continue to develop your game, get that sort of focused attention on your game versus being in the Panthers environment where they can't really give you that one-on-one attention throughout the season when they're trying to compete for another Stanley Cup. You either have to fit in or not fit in. And I think for him, it's a developmental decision. Maybe he feels like University of Denver helps him develop a little bit better than playing in Charlotte right now. And I don't knock him for that. The AHL, the NHL will be here when he's ready to make the jump. He will have a spot. I don't think it's a bad move at all for him to go to college. I don't think it's a knock on the Panthers organization either. I don't think this is a guy who's ready to leave or exploring other options right now. I think it's a guy who really just wanted to develop more and get his degree. And that's an underrated thing. We don't talk about that enough, but some guys just want to finish college. They want to get their degree and they want to have a backup plan for when hockey's over. And I don't knock him for that either.
And a finance degree is so translatable in so many different, if you're applying to different places. So I think when you think about finance there for him, and think about for him, the fact that it's going to be done in the winter, so you could spend your whole spring season on just hockey, and this gives you more an evaluation period more when you could just wake up and start easing into that transition of just being wake up and just do that instead of being in the books too. I don't know what his educational plans are after. He didn't say anything, but hey, that could be something used. Let's say he plays till 35. The fact that he has that and what he's bringing to the table, some people want to do something else outside of it, and I have nothing but respect for that.
And let's remember, he's a 7th round pick. Also, this isn't like it's a situation where it's a top 10 pick and you're like itching for this guy who's supposed to be a franchise changing talent to get into your system. This is a 7th round pick that was always supposed to be a developmental project. It looks like another guy that Bill Zito managed to find a diamond in the rough with. I don't think Jack Devine is going to necessarily burn the team that believed in him. He doesn't strike me as that type of dude. And also he's a guy who's super, super talented. And I do think we should temper expectations a little bit of expecting a 7th round pick to jump right into the NHL and be productive. Let's let him have his development curve the way that he would like to prioritize his development curve and give him that space to do that. And I think that the open communication between Panthers management, Jack Devine's camp, and just deciding what's best for him, I think that's great. And the Panthers haven't always had the ability to let prospects develop at the pace that they should have the ability to develop at. This is we'll see where he's at when his college season ends. Panthers will very likely be in the playoff mix. You could see him join Charlotte. You could see him join the Black Aces next postseason. And I think he's in a really good spot. I'm going to be watching him all year in college and see what he can do. Reminds me a lot of Jake Gensel as a player. I'm excited to see what he can develop into with the Panthers, hopefully, and that's what I expect to happen.
Yeah, and it's like having the slow cooker on by having it at one of the lowest settings. So just let it cook and just let it develop. That's how we can see the development of Jack Devine for where he was at to hopefully where he could become. But reminder, scrimmage is Thursday for decamp. It's at 5 p.m. open to the public too. Originally said 4, but it's actually at 5 p.m. But make sure to get there early too, regardless, everybody. So you do have a spot inside of the Baptist Health Iceplex. And so we definitely really, really excited about that. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, a Wednesday late afternoon edition of the show. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8, and hopefully I'll see all of you guys at the scrimmage tomorrow. That should be really good. Looking forward to it.
Yep, see you all at the scrimmage if you go. So Jacob and I will see you at the scrimmage and next week, my friend.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steve Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.